Fact: the new NSA data center in Utah requires 1.7 million gallons of water every single day to operate. Billions of Fourth Amendment violations need massive computers and the water to cool them. That water is being supplied by the state of Utah. Fact: there's absolutely nothing in the Constitution which requires your state to help the feds violate your rights. Our message to Utah: turn it off. No water equals no NSA data center. Visit offnow.org.
All right, you all, welcome back to the show here. I'm Scott Horton. This is my show, The Scott Horton Show. Happy Friday to you. I hope you don't have to work on the weekends. Unless you really like your job, in which case I hope you have to work long hours all weekend long. Whatever. Anyway. Hey, guess what? On the phone, it's our old friend Doug Bandow from the Cato Institute and Forbes magazine. Welcome back to the show, Doug. How the hell are you?
Doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's very good to hear you again. It's very good to read you. It's always good to read you. I just love the stuff that you write. And in fact, if it's okay, I'm going to ask you about elephants to start here, because once we start on the Saudi thing, we're not going to get a chance to talk about elephants. But you wrote this brilliant thing that I wish everyone who cares about elephants in the world, which is I think all 7 billion of us, would read and translate it into whatever your local language is, all about how to prevent the extinction or the near extinction, this terrible current violent campaign against elephants to preserve this wonderful animal, the Asian and the African too. I guess the African more so are threatened by these poachers. But anyway, could you please just give them the nutshell version of how to protect elephants so that they continue existing?
Well, elephants are fantastic creatures. The problem is, if you live around elephants, they're a real pain. That is, they destroy your villages, they destroy your crops, and they have these fabulous tusks, which ivory is very valuable, and it doesn't matter that it's against the law. Lots of people, especially in Asia, want stuff made of ivory. So there's this huge market, where people will kill elephants and just take the tusks. I mean, they care about nothing else. And local folks, dozens of African farmers die every year trying to protect their farms from elephants. They're quite happy to have poachers show up and kill the things, unless you kind of infuse them with value. And it kind of, I know, runs against the grain of a lot of people I talk to, because these are kind of fantastic creatures. I mean, they're very intelligent. They're very kind of family oriented. Nevertheless, the best way to try to kind of protect them is to infuse value in them. So the point is, if you have an ivory market, then it makes sense to kind of keep them alive. You don't want to slaughter them all. And what you want to do is, elephants die naturally. They, some places they're over kind of population. They cull them. You sell that ivory, and then you have to share those proceeds with local villagers. In a sense, and what I tell people is, in the American experience is, we had buffalo and we had cattle. Cattle never went extinct because they were owned. People kind of had a reason to keep them and to maintain them. Buffalo were wiped out because there were just kind of masses of them. Nobody could care less. They just shot them all, left them all to die. We have to be much more creative here, because we talk about poor countries. They don't have effective militaries. They don't have effective park systems. If you want to save the elephants, you've got to create some resources there and encourage, especially local people, to invest in them. And right now we're not doing that very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the whole public TV version of this would be, well, we just, enlightened museum board of directors type liberal white people from the West should somehow, through the IMF or something, force these local governments in Africa to do as they're told, and to carve out giant pieces of their land to keep them as nature preserves, because we like looking at elephants and monkeys and stuff on TV. And so, that's the end of that. They need to create a collectively owned, a state-owned area there, and then just that'll be it, right? Hire soldiers to keep the poachers out or whatever, and do it that way. And it sounds like what you Cato guys and your cruel, ruthless capitalism, you're saying that somebody ought to own these elephants, and that's even worse than poachers killing them where they're supposed to be protected on public land.
Exactly. I mean, I get responses. I mean, people kind of say that, well, people should just stop wanting to use ivory. Well, yeah, I understand that, but that hasn't worked. And then I even had one person who wrote me and said, well, the U.S. military should put its troops in to protect elephants. And I'm trying to imagine, President Obama announcing to the nation that we now are invading Zimbabwe to kind of protect the wildlife refuges. I mean, it ain't going to happen. I mean, we have to recognize kind of the fragility of these societies. They're impoverished. They're poor. Local villagers have a set of incentives here, which we white international types don't really understand. We don't live there. We're not under those conditions. So if you want to save the elephants, you've got to figure out something in the context of the reality where they're living, and markets help us there. And it doesn't matter that one may not, in theory, like markets. Well, in this case, they'll help to keep the creatures alive. Far better to have a lot more elephants surviving than to kind of be very pious, saying, I love elephants, but we can't do this terrible thing and kind of have markets in ivory and then have them all killed.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me, I mean, the economics of the black market dictate that you just can't stop it. And it seems like, except in the most extreme moral cases, like human slavery, where it must be absolutely universally outlawed, and that outlawing must be ruthlessly enforced, ultimately enforced, as much as absolutely possible to stop any human slavery ever. You're just driving up the price and giving even human slavers more reason to get involved in the thing. Now, you can't make an exception there. But in the case of animals, we're talking about animals here. It's the same thing with birds. The guys on Free Talk Live did a whole thing all about exotic bird smuggling and how many more of these the greatest birds ever evolved on Earth are completely destroyed because of the black market trade in them. It just makes no sense,
It's really awful. I mean, I think we share the objective. It's a question of means. And I say, hey, the current system isn't working very well, so let's look for something else.
Yeah. And you can make that compromise when you're talking about elephants. Even if they are genius elephants, they're still animals, We're not talking about little kids here.
No, that's right. I mean, that it's a different situation. There are certain moral imperatives of humankind that you can't kind of make exceptions with, where I think in animals you can. You can still respect them very much, but it makes sense to say, what's the most effective way to try to, have the most of them around?
Right. All right, now, I'm going to be quiet, and you just tell everybody for 10 minutes why... Enough of the Saudis. We don't need them to tell us what to do we?
Well, yeah, it's so tiresome. I mean, these the Saudi royals, kind of are massively rich off, their own people. They run this kind of theocracy and authoritarian state, and then they're out there lecturing America, and it turns out they're upset. They're mad at us. Well, because we won't bomb the Syrians. Oh my, now we want to negotiate with the Iranians. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, we don't like the Egyptian military because it's killing people. How dare we? Well, it's extraordinary. On the one hand, they cry crocodile tears on the tragedy in Syria. And it is a tragedy, but these people don't care about tragedy. They supported Saddam Hussein, who used chemical weapons against the Iranians. They support the Egyptian military. They support the Bahraini, Sunni monarchy, kind of cuts down protesters. So they don't care about kind of, human beings. Everything's kind of politics, and they're mad because America isn't doing what they want. And my reaction is, well, tough. I mean, they need us more than we need them. I mean, if they don't sell their oil, what happens to them? They don't live the good life anymore. They're desperate to sell their oil. They need to sell it more than we need to buy it.
Well, maybe they can just sell it to the Europeans or the Japanese, though.
Well, the point is, it's an international marketplace. The more they sell to them, the more somebody else will send to us. And they don't dominate. I mean, especially with all the changes happening in the energy marketplace these days, with fracking and all these other things. The Saudis are less important than ever in terms of their role in the energy marketplace. And if they don't sell it, what are they going to do? Drink it? I mean, come on. The good news is they need us more than they. I mean, you talk about who'd be in trouble if they don't sell it. How are they going to fund all their little trips abroad? How are they going to try to pay off their military to protect them?
Yeah. Michael Scheuer, the former chief of the CIA's bin Laden unit, says that bin Laden himself used those exact words, that even if it was him and his guys running things over there, they're still going to sell the oil. They're just going to charge you the market price instead of whichever one you're dictating this week.
I mean, whoever controls it, the only value is if you sell it. To try to keep it off the market, the place falls apart. We need to recognize that. We have them over a barrel. They don't have us over a barrel.
Well, why does America put up with it at all?
Well, there's that illusion of oil, dependence, which, we seem to think that we are so vulnerable when in fact we aren't. And I think part of it is Americans just don't pay attention to the fact it's an international marketplace. Our vulnerability has fallen. Even things like boycotts don't work. You just want to boycott America, well, it's no problem. I mean, if somebody in the Netherlands buys the oil and then sells it to an American, and the tanker changes course in the ocean. I mean, they've never had that kind of dominant power. Everybody in OPEC cheats. And now with this kind of fracking and all the new oil discoveries off Africa, Central Asia, the importance of Saudi Arabia continues to fall. So Americans are kind of behind the times who think the Saudis have all this power. They simply don't.
I think this was in Michael Moore's movie, the Fahrenheit movie back then. It was some kind of poll where the American people has just assumed that Saudi Arabia was a modern democratic country, much like ours, because otherwise how come we're such bosom buddies with them? People just rationalize like that. And you talk about the licentiousness of the leadership and their oppression of the regular people of Saudi Arabia. But, I have to tell you, I think that story is pretty much a black hole here in America. We just don't hear that narrative very much about what life is like for Saudis there. And by the way, Charles Featherstone was on the air just last week, was on the show, and he was saying he did journalism out of Saudi Arabia for a while, and he said it's not a totalitarian society. There's still a lot of freedom, if it's not total freedom, whatever. It's not quite a nightmare, but what is it, Doug?
Well, look, it's very hard to have a true totalitarian state. What they do is it's certainly not a democratic place. There's no, kind of genuine elections. The higher you are up within society, the more opportunity you're going to have. But, bloggers who criticize royalty get in trouble. There are no elections. There's no religious freedom. If you're a foreigner kind of worshiping at home, you're probably not going to get caught, but any kind of a gathering of people, even at a private home, Christian or otherwise, at least if you're not in a kind of a real foreign neighborhood, you can get arrested. So it's a nasty place in the sense that the freedoms we would normally assume. One that's gotten a lot of attention is women driving. Women are, in a very different place there in terms of what they can do. A very male-dominated society, very rigid. So, if you want, the question is, do you want to be there or in Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union? I'd say, sure, I'd be in Saudi Arabia. But, it's a question of Saudi Arabia, frankly, in any other Gulf state. You'd much prefer to be in Kuwait or Oman or Bahrain or any of the others because, they're all better in the sense of giving much greater space to private thought, to private media, that sort of thing. So, Saudi Arabia really doesn't share American values. A lot of the people are very nice. They have a real culture of hospitality. There's a lot of things there you can appreciate in individual Saudis. But the system, it's a very authoritarian monarchy. An elite, how you count it, 7,000 or more princes who basically dominate. Most of the money goes to them. Who gets to spend it all? A lot of Saudis aren't that well off because, the money doesn't get to everybody, especially the Shia minority. So it's not the kind of place that I think we would normally celebrate as being somehow consistent with American values.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of the Shia minority, that's basically up there in the Northeast where all the oil is, and so is it their property and the government is just, collectivizes their property and steals all the oil out from under them? And how badly are they treated compared to the others?
There's a good argument for that. It's declared to be national property, so it's being, kind of developed for the nation, but of course, who actually controls it? Well, it's, the Sunni monarchy as opposed to the Shia who live nearby.
Yeah, and then how bad are they treated compared to, say, draw like a Jim Crow parallel? Better or worse than that compared to the majority?
They're clearly second class. Especially in terms of religious. The division between Sunni and Shia is very sharp. I hesitate calling it. There's a uniqueness to Jim Crow where it's your skin color that causes everything. But they clearly don't have any political influence commensurate with their status their ability to worship and have their own kind of imams, kind of their own preaching. I mean, all of that is circumscribed because the Sunni state is very nervous about what might be preached and what, they don't want to have extremism. They don't want to have people threatening them. So all that stuff is pretty controlled.
Yeah, well, and that's the worst kind of tyranny, too. Over people's most sincere beliefs and that kind of thing. Their basic conscience, what they think in their own mind, what they want to believe in. It's horrifying. And also stealing their oil. Imagine that. You shoot at the ground, up comes some bubbling crude, and then down comes the government. Sarah Palin comes and nationalizes it, takes it all away from you.
That's right.
Like they're communists or something.
I mean, that's fairly common. You look around and you try to find the source of money. So, in the Middle East, oil is the real source of wealth for these people, so you can be sure the government's going to do its best to monopolize the control. Yeah. And they do that quite well in Saudi Arabia.
All right, now, so we got this whole, you talked about the Sunni Shia divide in just in Saudi Arabia, and obviously a big part of the American policy, at least in effect, is divide and conquer, although I don't know how good of a job they're doing at conquering. They sure as hell divide everybody pretty well. But it seems like right now, at least part of the establishment, because it ain't just the president, part of the establishment wants some kind of rapprochement with Iran, which seems to me like it could be a huge deal if they wanted to turn it into a real warming of and normalization of relations, and then that would really defang the entire, what I think is probably really a fake boogeyman anyway, this so-called Shiite crescent that has the Israelis crying all day, Hezbollah as backed by Syria, as backed by Iran, with a little help from Iraq on the side.
No, obviously it would be a huge reduction in tension if we could come up with some kind of a peaceful resolution with the Iranians. The potential of war there, I mean, everybody's very nervous. The Kuwaitis, it's a monarchy, but it's a relatively liberal place. I mean, this is a place where women are in business. I mean, you go there, you'll find women who are, Kuwaiti women who are dressed like Westerners. I mean, this is not nearly as repressive as, say, Saudi Arabia. Relatively free media, an elected parliament, assembly. They have some political problems, but this is a place much freer. I mean, they're very nervous about Iran. Now, they're nervous about Iran in terms of what it could do, but they're even more nervous about the idea of war with the U.S. and Iran, that they would get drawn into something like that. So if you could kind of diffuse those tensions, it would be huge. And a lot of what we see, the potential threatening behavior of Iran, well, of course, we're threatening them. I mean, if you do that, you can't be surprised if they threaten others.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Doug Bandow, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
Hey, y'all. Scott here for MyHeroesThink.com. They sell beautiful 7-inch busts of libertarian heroes, Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, Ron Paul, and Harry Brown. I've got the Harry Brown one on the bookshelf now. Makes me smile every time it catches my eye. These finely crafted statues from MyHeroesThink.com make excellent decorations for your desktop at work, bookends for your shelves, or gifts for that special individualist in your life. They're also all available in colors now, too. Of course, gold, silver, or bronze. Coming soon, Hayek, Hazlitt, Carlin. Use promo code Scott Horton and save $5 at MyHeroesThink.com. Hey y'all, Scott here. Man, I had a chance to have an essay published in the book Why Peace, edited by Mark Gutman, but I didn't understand what an opportunity it was. Boy, do I regret I didn't take it. This compendium of thoughts by the greatest anti-war writers and activists of our generation will be remembered and studied long into the future. You've got to get Why Peace. You've got to read Why Peace. It features articles by Harry Brown, Robert Naiman, Fred Bronfman, Dahlia Wasfy, Richard Cummings, Karen Kotowski, Butler Schaefer, Kathy Kelly, Robert Higgs, Anthony Gregory, and so many more. Why Peace? Because war is the health of everything wrong with our society. Get Why Peace down at the bookshop or Amazon.com. Just click the book in the right margin at scotthorton.org. Hey, all, Scott Horton here for The Future Freedom, the monthly journal of the Future Freedom Foundation. As you may already be aware, Jacob Hornberger, Sheldon Richmond, and James Bovard are awesome. They're also in every issue of The Future Freedom, and they're joined by others of the best of the libertarian movement. People like Anthony Gregory, Wendy McElroy, Lawrence Vance, Joe Stromberg, and many more. Even me. Sign up for The Future Freedom at fff.org/subscribe. It's just $25 a year for the print edition, $15 to read it online. That's The Future Freedom, edited by Sheldon Richmond at fff.org/subscribe. And tell me you heard it here. Why does the U.S. support the tortured dictatorship in Egypt? Because that's what Israel wants. Why can't America make peace with Iran? Because that's not what Israel wants. And why do we veto every attempt to shut down illegal settlements on the West Bank? Because it's what Israel wants. Seeing a pattern here? Sick of it yet? It's time to put America first. Support the Council for the National Interest at councilforthenationalinterest.org and push back against the Israel lobby and their sock puppets in Washington, D.C. That's councilforthenationalinterest.org. Hey, all, Scott here, hawking stickers for the back of your truck. They've got some great ones at libertystickers.com. Get your son killed, Jeb Bush 2016. FDR, no longer the worst president in American history. The National Security Agency, blackmailing your congressman since 1952. And USA, sometimes we back Al-Qaeda, sometimes we don't. And there's over 1,000 other great ones on the wars, police, state, elections, the Federal Reserve, and more at libertystickers.com. They'll take care of all your custom printing for your band or your business at thebumpersticker.com. libertystickers.com. Everyone else's stickers suck.